Well, good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here virtually, and I echo all of the sentiments about wishing we could do this in person somewhere else rather than my living room. But welcome to my living room, and I hope that you're as excited to be here and to learn some new stuff as I am to share it. So some of what I'm going to share you will have just heard a little bit about, and maybe I'll give it a little bit different spin. I want to begin where the previous presenter ended with the COVID response. So a little bit about SAMHSA's response. As part of HHS, we work closely with FEMA and our other federal partners like CDC, as well as like the state, local, tribal governments to execute this whole of America response to the COVID pandemic. We are congressionally funded and we're data driven. Some of you may be aware or may not that Congress authorized over $425 million in additional supplemental funding to support national behavioral health needs. Some things that SAMHSA has done with those dollars: we expanded our certified community behavioral health clinic program. We released a huge emergency COVID mental health substance use disorder resource funding package, over $110 million for that. We've expanded our suicide prevention funding, specifically increasing our lifelines and the Zero Suicide program. And we dedicated a bunch of emergency funds to tribes, about 15 million there. Further, we're data driven, and you'll see some of those data in a second. Since the COVID pandemic took off, we've seen over an 809% increase in our calls to the disaster distress helpline relative to last year. States are also reporting increases to the suicide prevention lines and increased reports of domestic abuse. Our state authorities are reporting problems caring for those with mental and substance use disorders, limited hospital treatment capacity, and limited services in rural areas. So we're continuing to monitor these situations. And of course, we have a nationwide emergency declaration with all states applying for our crisis counseling program funds. So SAMHSA's been busy. Specifically, we have a 3-part national action plan to deal with COVID-19 because, of course, we have to respond to the needs of the general public. We have to respond to the needs of our special populations, people who have serious mental illness or substance use disorder. And then we also want to take care of our public health workforce. So you can see on this slide some of the things that we're doing to take care of each of these populations. For the public, SAMHSA is doing what it has always done best, and that's producing information and resources for people to stay most informed about these issues. We are continuing to support our helplines, and of course, even though we are doing social distancing, that doesn't mean that you're socially distant, making sure that people understand the need to stay connected during this time. For our special populations, we of course have our treatment finders, the findtreatment.samhsa.gov and findtreatment.gov websites, so people can continue to access care. We have increased flexibilities around telehealth, as well as making sure people can share health information at this time in ways that they never have been able to before. And as Chris mentioned, we're continuing to put out recovery resources, virtual recovery groups, making sure that the people who have gotten well can stay well during this particularly challenging time. Finally, for our workforce, we have a national network of technology transfer centers. These groups are funded to help everyone in the country do their job better. Prior to 2018, these technology transfer centers were restricted access to just SAMHSA grantees, but as of 2018, anyone can access them. So make sure, if you haven't done a Google search for TTCs, I'll actually share some of that information later in this presentation so you can check out those resources. It's one of the most underutilized and valuable resources in our country relative to behavioral health. So these no-cost resources are there and available for everyone. With that, I want to tell you a little bit about SAMHSA. We're a young agency founded in 1992. This is our organizational chart. And you can see that we have 4 different centers. We're based out of DC. We're organized around the offices of the Assistant Secretary, who is Eleanor McCants-Katz. And within the Office of the Assistant Secretary, we have our National Policy Lab and Office of the Chief Medical Officer. You can see some of our basic truths listed around the edge of this slide. We truly believe that prevention works, treatment is effective, behavioral health is essential to health, and people do recover. So if you've ever wondered who SAMHSA is and what we are, there it is. This is our mission, but really this is just a fancy way of saying saving lives. And this mission is really far too big for any one of us to do alone. So while 99% of SAMHSA is in Rockville, there are at least 10 of us out in the regions. So if you are not in Region 4, like I am, there's my little picture down in the corner, then please reach out to your regional administrator. We are your #1 point of contact and #1 partner in this fight in your region from SAMHSA. So if you get nothing else out of the next 20 some odd minutes of me talking to you on this webinar, I want you to make sure that you write down my email address. Make sure you know how to get in touch with me after this. And at this point, this is where I would normally do the SAMHSA cheer, but we're not going to do the SAMHSA cheer on the webinar because it would be weird. So a little bit of surveillance. So we know that almost 60 million Americans reported mental and/or substance use disorder, according to the 2018 NISTA survey. We know that 47 million had a mental illness. We know that about 19 million had a substance use disorder. And we know that there's a significant overlap with millions having both of these. We know that serious mental illness has been rising significantly among young adults and adults. So it really should come as no surprise that there's a crisis no one is talking about. We have a suicide crisis in our country right now, despite the pandemic still going on, and it's probably going to get worse after this. I can't wait to see those surveillance data. We really can't talk about other things without talking about suicide, right? This is, according to the last CDC Vital Signs report, almost every state has seen an increase over time in the last 15 years. In fact, in 25 states, there was a 30% plus increase. So also consider the suicide rate among persons aged 10 to 24 increased 56% between 2007 and 2017. This made suicide the second leading cause of death for persons aged 10 to 14, 15 to 19, and 20 to 24, actually exceeding homicide. So this kind of blows my mind. What kind of world are we living in where this is happening? We know that substance use is more frequent among people with mental illness. We know that illicit substance use and misuse is also more common. In 2017, it's really important to note that overdose in general became the leading cause of unintentional injury-related death, surpassing motor vehicle accidents. And guess what? Opioids were the leading cause of overdose death, which is, I guess, not surprising to many of us now. Now, we also know that about 67,000 overdose deaths occurred in the US in 2018, which was a 4.1% decline from 2017, but still 2/3 of those involved opioids. We know that for every one death, 11 people had a heroin substance use disorder, which is actually a decrease from previous years. This downward trend was probably accounted for by like the decline in young adult, like those 18 to 25-year-olds using heroin. We know that for every death, 36 people reported a prescription opioid substance use disorder, which reflects a decrease in prescription opioid misuse across all age groups, really. I think that's what that's about. We know that for everyone who died, 220 people misused prescription opioids in the past year. And over time data suggests that both pain reliever misuse and heroin use are decreasing. This was, of course, based on the 2018 NISTA data, so we need a little more current data on this. And we know that the majority of people continue to obtain those from friends and relatives. That's that gray part of the pie on this picture. I know there's a lot of words there. So friends and relatives, healthcare providers continue to be the source of this. So this really underscores the need for ongoing education of our practitioners, appropriate pain management, and really from the SAMHSA perspective, continuing strong partnerships with states to monitor opioid prescribing. Finally, we know that for every one person who died, over 1,000, or approximately 15% of the population, filled at least one prescription for an opioid. In fact, I was one of those. I went to the dentist during this data collection year, and they gave me a prescription for a medication with opioids in it. And I filled that, and then I looked down at the bottle, and I was like, wow, look at that. I'm a statistic. So it's really logical that non-fatal emergency department visits for opioid overdoses continue to increase year to year. There was a 3.5% increase in about 10 states from Q1 2018 to Q1 2019. And these data are from the CDC's Enhanced State Opioid Overdose Surveillance System. And hopefully we'll be able to get a little more current data in the near future. It's not already out. But because deaths are closely linked to the fentanyl supply, which seems to keep going up, as Dr. Jones talked about earlier, we still have a lot of work to do. And despite the burden, we know that treatment gaps remain for substance use disorder, mental illness, all across the board still remains substantial. Like I said, we have a lot of work to do. So big picture, what's HHS doing? Well, Health and Human Services, SAMHSA is part of that. We're all working together to address opioids and overdoses based on a 5-point plan. You can learn more about this at that website that's listed at the bottom of this slide, hhs.gov/opioids. As I describe more of what SAMHSA is doing nationally, you'll see how it all fits in with this plan. You'll also notice that it fits in with SAMHSA's own strategic plan, which you can find online. This is the website where you can find it. This is a picture of it. But here it is in a nutshell. It has 5 points. Again, 5 is the magic number, just like the opioid plan. Our priorities are very similar to the HHS plan. Opioids, mental illness, substance use, data, training the workforce. You'll see how that all comes together when I tell you some more about what SAMHSA is doing today. So SAMHSA is probably best known for its 2 huge block grants to states, the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Block Grant, which really targets prevention, treatment, and recovery services, and the Community Mental Health Services Block Grant, which targets adults with serious mental illness and children with serious emotional distress. These are grants that are broad in purpose and administered by states, but have a few strings attached. So for example, we might require 20% of the substance abuse block grant be spent on primary prevention. In addition to our block grants, we give away a lot of opioid-specific money, almost $1 billion to states and millions to tribes to expand prevention, treatment, and recovery services. Now, you can't raise your hand, but who here has one of these in their pocket or within easy reach, right? Like if you're a practitioner on the front lines, if you're involved in public health, everyone should have one of these, or at least know where to go get one. If you don't already know how to administer naloxone, consider seeking out a free training, getting a dose or 2 to carry around, put it on your to-do list, right? You've got some time right now. SAMHSA has been working hard to expand access to and safe administration of naloxone for a long time now, almost doubling the funding over the last couple of years. And we know this is working. How do we know? Well, we looked at the data. We know it's working because the data show this huge increase in naloxone dispensing from US pharmacies. Over 270,000 kits were distributed to date. In fact, I think these data are out of date. But even better, we way surpassed our fiscal year 2019 goal. But the last data point that I heard from one of the SAMHSA grantees is that we had over 10,000 overdoses reversed, which is pretty amazing. That's 10,000 lives saved just via this program. We're continuing to provide resources for special population issues, special vulnerable populations like prevention and treatment for pregnant women and with neonatal opioid withdrawal, which is important to the tune of $40 million. We know that program effort is working because we see the trends moving in the right direction with decreases in past months substance use during pregnancy. We're also continuing our successful work with the criminal justice programs. We're supporting drug courts where grantees can use up to 20% of their award for medication-assisted treatment. We're even publishing special guidance like some of the guidance you see here. We're working with jail diversion programs still. You know, in I think the first year of that program, which was maybe fiscal year 2016, it was so successful. We had over 16,000 individuals diverted into SAMHSA supported programs in just the first year of doing that. Of course, we're continuing to work with offender reentry programs, so our grantees can even link people to services prior to release. It's really important. That's saving lives. We're funding several initiatives focused on suicide. As I mentioned, the dual epidemics of overdose and suicide. This fiscal year, we're supporting many of our longstanding programs with funds ranging from 2 to 7 million. You can see some of the programs listed on the side there. But one of the ones I want to highlight, our Governors and Mayors Challenges. These challenges train key community leadership teams to identify and help service members, families, and veterans who may be at risk for suicide. You can see on this slide the Region 4 participants in red, and you'll notice Mecklenburg County in North Carolina, for those of you in North Carolina, right there. So if you're curious about other grants that SAMHSA is producing, you can go to our website, just click on grants, and you can see all of the eligibility criteria, you can see all of the trainings, you can see who's getting what. In fact, there's a map. You can see who in your state has gotten your tax dollars. You can see who is a SAMHSA grantee, which is pretty exciting. It's just a few clicks away. But even better than grants, I mentioned earlier, our National System of Technology Transfer Centers. Since 2018, this has been available to you, and yet most of the people I talk to have no idea that these are out there or that they can access them. So this map shows our addiction technology transfer centers, which provide training, technical assistance for over 50,000 healthcare professionals during their first 2-year program of being nationally accessible. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. This is one of the products that you might find. The Mental Health Technology Transfer Center produced this guide for mental health in rural schools. That's super valuable. I know a lot of people feel like there aren't resources targeting rural areas, but our technology transfer centers are producing them. If you have no idea how to find the TTCs, here is their landing page list, all 3 of them and the entire network, right? In fact, even better than this list, which is just the general list, here in Region 4, these are your primary contacts. We have 3 TTCs located in Region 4. So if you don't want to just go to the general landing page, these are the people that you can contact. These are the people at the top of the heap. They will help you out. Now, beyond the TTCs, we also help our workforce by expanding evidence-based treatment. We issue guidelines and resources for serious mental illness. One way we're doing this is through our SMI Advisor website, and that supports real-world clinical practice through education, data, consultations. Check it out. We also have a version of this called PCSS, right? It's really the Opioid Response Network. It is 24-hour online data waiver training, mentoring, CEUs, webinars. For anyone involved in medication-assisted treatment, this is a fantastic resource. We provide rapid state-targeted technical assistance. This is the Opioid Response Network. The American Academy of Addiction Psychiatry is behind this, and 27 partner organizations. You'll notice that there is a send a request button on this website. They will respond to your questions, usually within about 24 hours, no matter what it's about. And these are people who are actually in your state, so they know what you're dealing with. This is a resource that anyone can use. Anyone who has a question in the field can reach out to these folks. Now, if you don't want to go to one of those sites, or maybe if you don't feel like the workforce thing is for you, you can go to SAMHSA. Online, we have our Evidence-Based Practice Resource Center. This is where we collected everything we know that works. And I just want to highlight something. The thing that I think is the best part of our Evidence-Based Practice Resource Center would be our treatment locator. So maybe the best resource on there. It lists all of our helplines. Now, this is the SAMHSA treatment locator. This includes all of our substance abuse as well as our mental health resources. Now, some of you may be aware that we had the recent launch of findtreatment.gov, and that is a little bit less robust, but more user-friendly. It has all of the substance abuse resources on it. I think it has fewer of the mental health resources on it, but people seem to have an easier job using it. So use them both. Why not? See what they turn out. We have a resource center dedicated to suicide prevention. And in fact, at this resource center on suicide prevention, you can find out what's going on in your state, find out how to get involved in case you were wondering what you could do to make a difference. Like, so this is the picture for Georgia, and these are people I could reach out to. Now, of course, as a public health agency, we're always working to improve our surveillance. We do this through the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, and trying to get our data out faster. You can see pictured here, this is the report for the 2018 data, as well as one of our 2017 health barometers, which are more focused on an individual state. If you haven't checked these out, definitely take a look at them. You can download them for free. We reinstated the Drug Abuse Warning Network as a syndromic surveillance system. This slide shows some data from the first quarter of, I think it was like 25 or 35 hospitals reporting, and that was in 2019. I think that's about 380,000 records. And we have a plan for enrolling all 50 states or hospitals in all 50 states in 2020. These data indicate some interesting things about methamphetamine toxicity. It's going to be interesting to see what these data start to show us. And then, of course, if you want to play with the numbers yourself, we improved access to our public use files by building an interactive query system online. So anyone can play with our survey data. If you go to SAMHSA, you can see the link here. That's a lot of fun for those epidemiologists in the crowd. Now, today you can help yourself by checking out some of our resources online. These are all free. You've paid for them with your tax dollars, like our opioid overdose prevention toolkit. It's free. It's a comprehensive collection of prevention and treatment materials. You could download one of our new-ish publications. I say new-ish because Tip 63 is already being revised. I don't know if the revised version is out yet, but it was the field is changing so fast that these just came out, and of course we're continuing to update them. If you don't already have at least one SAMHSA app on your phone, I encourage you to go get one now. They are also all free and easy to download. You'll notice that the MATX app, it was initially only for iPhones. It is also being updated. So that's coming soon. It's out sometimes, then we have to update it just like the Tip 63. If you want to plan and run a communities talk event to help your community address underage drinking, we have this all-inclusive guide for first-time hosts for example. That's kind of fun. Or maybe you just want to download a few timely infographics, right? Or fact sheets to share. These are all free for you. One thing that I like to point out to folks is that you can find new events or new partners in this fight by just joining this free SAMHSA sponsored network, the National Network to Eliminate Disparities. And you can find groups in your area working on projects of interest to you. Now, I want to point out everyone, National Prevention Week is coming up. It's going to be an interesting time to be part of this. But put it on your calendar, check it out, go to the website, figure out how to get involved still. But before we end, I feel like it would be malpractice for me if I don't talk a little bit about self-care. So as we know, Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, just having all of these data and all of these resources that I just shared with you, it's not really enough if you burn yourself out watching webinars all day. So because I care about you, it's my job actually, but I also care about you, I care about me. Let's all stand up for a second. If you're not already at a standing desk, go ahead and stand up. Keep watching the video. We're gonna do a little behavioral health PPE. Stand up and take a big deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Get some air in, shrug your shoulders, move around a little bit. You've been listening to this webinar for a while. Now, try this with your breath. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe it out for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and repeat. I'm giving you a chance to breathe. I won't count it out. All right, that's great. So now we're breathing, we're standing, we got our blood flowing. All right, who recognizes this, right? It's the holodeck from Star Trek, right? So if you guys didn't watch Star Trek, This is the place where all the crew went so that they could recover from a hard day. I want you to imagine your happy place. I want you to imagine somewhere other than your home office or wherever you're stuck in quarantine, because sometimes we need to go to that happy place in our mind. In fact, for example, Jean-Luc Picard, he would go home to his vineyard in France there with his favorite pit bull after a long mission out in space, right? And guess what? I encourage everyone on this webinar to go ahead and do this for themselves, right? I want you to, if you don't have it already, find a picture of your favorite place, of your happy place, of your holodeck. Put it on your phone. Put it somewhere easy to find on your phone. This is a picture of me driving into Joshua Tree National Park like I do every year about this time. And of course, I would love to be there right now, but there's some things in the way of that. So I want you to think about this as a way to take care of yourself. Remember to stand up and breathe and move around. And remember, all of our mission is saving lives. SAMHSA is here to work with you as a partner. We have a number of free resources that are ready for you, that are ready to help, and behavioral health really is an essential part of health. So keep breathing, keep working, and we're going to get through this together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. King, for the information and the resources and the therapy there at the end. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed we didn't get the SAMHSA cheer. Maybe we'll call later to get that. We do have a question, and we do have a minute for that. Sort of a statement / question. There is concern that as the nation's attention turns towards COVID-19, attention to the opioid epidemic will turn away, funding and support for SUD and OUD will wane. What are your thoughts about that?
So, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. I just want to make sure I'm still all right. Good deal. Wow.
It's a toughie.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to just say I don't know, because I think that reinforces the fact that we're all in this sort of uncertainty together. And I think that, before COVID-19, we had a lot of things happening. We had the dual epidemics of overdoses. We had suicide happening. I think that a lot of what's happened since the pandemic started is not anything that makes those problems better. From just a general society side, I think that some of the solutions that we found, some of the innovative public health solutions that we found to the pandemic, could be really interesting to watch and to continue for moving forward with those other epidemics, because just the access to care issues that we've had to deal with were there before, but there was less impetus to deal with them. And so one of the things that I really am encouraged by is all of the positive stories about telehealth and access to information and services for really hard to reach populations, because now we're all a hard to reach population.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good point.
I think and I think now we're all really walking in other people's shoes, which is always a really interesting experience, right? To figure out, here I am stuck, just like other people, just live in rural areas. They may feel this way every day, but we're going through this very temporary experience, and it's driving us up the wall. So now we can understand what it feels like to be cut off from things that other people have access to, right?
Yeah.
To me, I want to believe, and I'm an optimist. I think that we're going to come through this actually better than before. I don't know the name of it, but I know that there's this technique in Japan of repairing things that have been broken with another material, where something has been shattered, but then they put it back together with like gold or some other like wild material. And then that item is actually stronger after it has been shattered and reassembled than it was before it was shattered. And I wish I knew the name of that technique, but I think of us as a society like that right now. I think we've been a little bit chipped and shattered, and we've rebuilt ourselves in a way that will make us stronger afterwards.
Thank you. Very hopeful message.